Skilla. Enhancing Careers. Chapter 7. Strategic Maritime Passages. The density of global maritime transport system forces a convergence of shipping routes at specific locations of strategic importance, which are narrow passages and create bottlenecks in maritime traffic. There are 8 major maritime bottlenecks through which much the world's shipping has to pass. The most important strategic maritime passages are known as choke points. Choke points tend to be shallow and narrow, impairing navigation and imposing capacity limits on ships. Disruption of trade flows through any of these export routes could have a significant impact on the world economy. Many choke points are next to politically unstable countries, increasing the risk of compromising their access and use, such as with piracy. Closures are a rare instance that only took place in situations of war, as one proponent prevented another to access and use the choke point. A closure of a maritime choke point in the current global economy, even if temporary, would have important economic consequences, with the disruption of trade flows and even the interruption of some supply chains. The Panama Canal, the Suez Canal, the Strait of Malacca, and the Strait of Hormuz account for the world's 4 most important strategic maritime passages, in part because of the choke points they impose of global freight circulation and in part because of the economic activities and resources they grant more efficient access to. Their continuous availability for global maritime circulation is challenging. The Panama Canal. The Panama Canal joins the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans across the Isthmus of Panama. Its operational characteristics involve a length of 64 kilometers, a depth of 12.5 meters, a width of 32 meters. The Panama Canal is of strategic importance to the United States as it enables to link the East and the West Coast more quickly, saving about 13,000 kilometers for a maritime journey. Over 13,000 vessel transits per annum, each taking about 23 hours of CWT canal water time to climb from sea level through 3 series of locks, 26 meters up to Gatun Lake, and then down again to sea level through 3 more series of locks. Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is an artificial waterway of about 190 kilometers in length, running across the Isthmus of Suez in northeastern Egypt, which connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Gulf of Suez, an arm of the Red Sea. The Suez Canal immediately cuts the distance between Europe and the Far East, allowing vessels to avoid the long and arduous voyage around the Cape. It has no locks, because the Mediterranean Sea and the Gulf of Suez have roughly the same water level, and thus is the world's longest canal without locks. The minimum width of the channel is 60 meters, and ships of 18 meters draft can make the transit. The canal can accommodate ships as large as 220,000 deadweight tons fully loaded. The Suez Canal is one of the world's most heavily used shipping lanes, with an average of 55 ships using it daily. The Strait of Malacca. The Strait of Malacca is one of the most important strategic passages of the world because it supports the bulk of the maritime trade between Europe and Pacific Asia, which accounts for 50,000 ships per year. Linking the Indian and Pacific Oceans, the Straits of Malacca is the shortest sea route between 3 of the world's most populous countries, India, China, and Indonesia, and therefore is considered to be the key choke point in Asia. It measures about 800 kilometers in length, has a width between 50 and 320 kilometers, 2.5 kilometers at its narrowest point, and a minimal channel depth of 23 meters. It represents the longest strait in the world used for international navigation and can be transited in about 20 hours. Singapore, located at the southern end of the Strait of Malacca, is one of the most important ports in the world and a major oil refining center. Narrow channels, shallow reefs, thousands of tiny getaway islands, and slow traffic with some 900 commercial vessels passing through each day make the waters around Singapore, Malaysia, and neighboring Indonesia a pirate's dream. The Strait of Hormuz. Near the bottom end of the 600-mile-long Persian, Arabian, Gulf, the Straits of Hormuz, at their narrowest point, are just 34 miles across, between the Sultanate of Oman and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Vessels transiting the Straits of Hormuz have to adhere to strict traffic separation schemes, which provide 2-mile-wide channels for inbound and outward-bound vessels, with a 2-mile buffer zone in between. 80% of the oil produced in the Persian Gulf is transported by tanker through the Straits of Hormuz. It is estimated that globally, 35% of oil transported by sea has to pass through the strait. The Strait of Bab el-Mandab is controlling access to the Suez Canal, a strategic link between the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea. It has between 48 and 80 kilometers of width, but navigation is limited to 2-3 kilometers wide channels for inbound and outbound traffic. The sizable amount of tanker traffic makes navigation difficult along the narrow channels. A closing of this strait would have serious consequences, forcing a detour around the Cape of Good Hope and in the process demanding additional tanker space. Gibraltar. As a peninsula between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean Oceans, Gibraltar represents an obligatory passage point between these two oceans and is controlled by Britain. The strait is about 64 kilometers long and varies in width from 13 to 39 kilometers. Bosphorus and Turkish Straits. The Bosphorus in Turkey is one of the busiest waterways in the world, linking the Black Sea to the Aegean and Mediterranean seas and thence to the outside world. With the passage of the Dardanelles, Bosphorus forms the only link between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Ocean. In the current context, Bosphorus represents a passage of growing strategic importance. The Caspian Sea has vast oil reserves, and a large amount of it must transit trough the Black Sea and Bosphorus to reach external markets, namely around the Mediterranean Sea. The future growth of petroleum circulation through Bosphorus is thus highly problematic, notably the risk of collisions and oil spills in the midst of Istanbul. In response, the Turkish government forbade in 2002 the use of the passage during the night by large tankers. The passage of Bosphorus has a length of 30 kilometers by a width of only 1 kilometer at its narrowest point. There are at least 12 abrupt and angular windings. There are powerful rapid currents, counter-currents, submerged eddies, and visibility sometimes goes down below 700 meters due to snow, rain, and fog. There are 2 major bridges crossing the waterway and approximate 45,000 vessels going up and down each year. There are approximate 15,000 ferries, carrying 1.5 million people crossing the Bosphorus every day, plus thousands of fishing and pleasure craft. International strategic waterways. Several international treaties have established freedom of navigation on semi-enclosed seas. Other international treaties have opened up rivers, which are not traditionally international waterways. The Copenhagen Convention of 1857 opened access to the Baltic by abolishing the Sound dues and making the Danish Straits an international waterway free to all military and commercial shipping. Several conventions have opened the Bosporus and Dardanelles to shipping. The latest, the Montreux Convention regarding the regime of the Turkish Straits, maintains the strait status as an international waterway. The Danube River is an international waterway so that landlocked Austria, Hungary, Serbia, and Slovakia, and the southern parts of Germany, itself not landlocked, can have secure access to the Black Sea.